If you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months.
Hey guys, welcome back to Be the Standard. I'm your host, Denny Jamazzo, and as always, excited to have you here. Excited to be here with a new guest. His name is Lucas Dyer. Lucas is a father of two. He's a Marine veteran, and he currently runs a financial planning practice with a main focus on wealth management and risk implementation. Welcome, brother.
Hey, Denny, man, how's it going?
Good,
Awesome. Love
good.
to be on the show.
Yeah, man, excited to have
It's
you
great.
here. We talked maybe 3-4 weeks ago now, and so I'm excited to have you as a guest
Yeah.
because one of the things I picked up on during our conversation was just all the parallels in our lives, our upbringings, and things of that nature. So it was really nice to meet you. But one of the things I wanted to touch upon and get into right away is, similar to myself, you kind of had a difficult upbringing, a difficult childhood. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I was looking over some of your guys' notes and stuff, and you have a lot of focus. And I think this is where I first saw
Right.
some of your guys' work, and then a mutual connection of ours, uh, Sandra, had connected us. And through you and I talking, we realized that there was a lot of similarities in that aspect of it. And I think you alluded to, your past doesn't define who you have to be. I'm paraphrasing your own words, but it's how my belief is as well, right? And I grew up in East Coast as well, New England boy, and my dad took off the second my mother was pregnant with my sister, which he's about a year younger than I am. So I didn't know the guy, and I'm 45 now. I've still never met the guy, and so everything I think that you see from me and how I raise my kids and who I am is 100% correlated to that aspect of growing up with no dad, right? And so in some cases, maybe I overdo it, right? Maybe I'm too much of a involved parent, but dude, I love it because like unlike me, when I grow up, which I'm 45, maybe I'll grow up soon, right? I still do question like, hey, why, right? Is it something that my mom did? Is it something that we did? Like, you don't know, you're a kid, you don't know. But I don't want my kids ever to look at me and have that doubt of, my dad didn't love me and my dad wasn't there and supportive. And so that's kind of the way I am today. But yeah, I mean, quick realm to that kid, no dad, young man in the East Coast, like you need a father. And if you don't have it, someone else teaches you how to grow up. And unfortunately, my someone else's weren't the best of influences, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I can definitely relate to everything you said, with the exception of, I don't have children, but one of the things I've always told myself is, if I find myself in that position at some point, hopefully I would like to still. I know I'm 41, but I'd like to think at least it's still possible. And I've always kind of told myself that, if I have that opportunity to be a father, I already know that, just given, my experiences, that I know all the I know all the wrong things to do, right? I've seen all the wrong things, and not just my father not being there, but some of the male role models that I had. Not that I didn't have any
Yeah.
positivity, right? But I just know that, given my experiences, that I would be an incredible father, just based off of, certainly what not to do, but then also I just see the importance of, you know what it means to be a good present father. Like you said, I'm not sure you could be too
Mhm.
involved, but I don't know. I can't say that from experience, but
Yeah.
that's kind of always been my take, is that I'll do it right and I'll do it well.
Yeah. Well, you shared with me, which I thought just the vulnerability and the authenticity of, within our first few conversations, you talked about not having a father as well. You talked about, I believe your mother had passed away at, I don't know if it was a young age, but, she's not in the picture, right? And so you kind of went through, I think probably everyone's worst fear is where do we go, right? It's foster care, or maybe a family takes care of you. And you've experienced a route that, and not that we don't compare, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at someone else's upbringing, and arguably it wasn't the great, but then you hear someone else's story, you're just like, holy shit, like, damn, and
Yeah.
how are you doing this so I can learn from you?
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the first, relatabilities right there is work with me, man. Like, teach me, how can I learn from you in terms of what you've gone through, your strengths and my strengths, and let's make this, be the standard mindset you guys have. Let's make a better world for someone else who is probably about to give up. And maybe this podcast show keeps them from not giving up, right? Or maybe that connection on LinkedIn saying, hey, just reaching out, man, want to see how you're doing. Maybe that keeps them from not giving up. And so that was my, who is this guy? Yeah, I'll be on your show. I'll give you a call when you need something. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And so much of what we talk about is just based off of, you don't share your story to compare, you don't share your story to gain sympathy or, praise or anything along those lines. It is to really let other people know that, you're not alone. Like, and I say it often, we all have our shit, whatever that looks like, we all have it. And, the differentiating factor is always, not what you went through, but what's the work you put in to be better or to be different and to ensure that, you're living, in accordance to, your core values, your belief system. And I think that really is paramount to telling your story and sharing it with other people. And these are the connections that I now find myself experiencing and sharing my story as I meet guys like you who are like, yeah, man, actually, I went through some tough shit too, and um, I love hearing that. I love when people uh, have these tangible examples of, I went through X, Y, and Z, and now look. I mean, I'm a 20-year Marine vet and, a doctor, and I run a wealth management firm, and like all these things. Like, all those things are just so impressive, and those are the things I love to see. I love to see the comeback story, right? I mean, anybody can sit there and say,
Mhm.
"This is my story. This is what I've been through," But the flip side of that is, okay, well, this is why I am in this shitty position because I went through this. Or it's, wow, look what I've
Yeah.
done. Look at the accomplishments I've been able to experience based off of those hardships and kind of flipping the script on, that negativity. So I think that's the idea behind, everything that, I'm
Yeah.
about in regards to kind of being vulnerable in that aspect. But
I think that flipping the script is so key. And as I think back to my Marine Corps time,
yeah,
that's almost like every day. You got a shitty day. Now what?
yeah.
What are you going to do next? I don't know. You can complain about it or embrace it. And so
And
you just learn to embrace it.
Oh, and that's just, isn't that just life in the military anyways, right? Like you're going to have a ton of shitty days where you're like, fuck, like, you know, uh, but talk to me about your Marine days. I'm curious to know, what you did in the Marines and, obviously the 20-year career, a long career like that, you wear a lot of hats, you experience a lot of different things, but, I know you're a combat veteran, you've been overseas. Talk to me a little bit about your, journey as a Marine and kind of what drove you towards service.
Yeah. To summarize it, I did cool shit, right? That's it. When people ask, hey, what'd you do in the Marine Corps? I did cool shit. I enlisted out of Springfield, Massachusetts, which I don't know, you guys are in Worcester, or I'm not sure if that's where you're at right now. So
Yeah.
I guess more east still. All right. I don't know, maybe like by an hour. It's been a minute since I've been back to the area, but
Yeah.
relatively where you guys are out of Springfield. And I grew up in Vermont and kind of in between Massachusetts as well. But I joined in 2000 and I actually started college in Wentworth Institute of Technology down in Boston. And so I started school there and I realized real quickly that I just wasn't able to afford it. We had spent a lot of money through family and working and depleted savings to get me into a private school, Vermont Academy in Southern Vermont. And I did 2 years after I graduated. So I did a postgraduate junior, senior repeat. And when I got to college, there just wasn't any money left to do anything. And so the Marine Corps was a viable option. But I joined to do 4 years and then I wanted to come back out to go back to college. And so for me, that was what life was about. You graduate high school, play hockey for as long as you possibly can until you're no longer within age limits for the high school regions. And then you go to college or you go to juniors. And Wentworth at that time, Division III was my level of caliber. That's where I was going to play at. And I just couldn't afford it. So I remember this vividly on my third year, 1 year up before enlistment, my first duty station, I had got approved for an early release school cut. So the way the Marine Corps looks at it is you have a 4 year contract. You serve 3 of those years honorably. They'll release you early back to a college. And then after your first year of completion, you'll receive your 4 year honorable discharge in the mail. I got approved for that, which is unheard of.
I've never
And
even
I
heard of
remember
that
sitting
program.
there in
That's
the
cool.
room. Yeah. And I remember sitting there in the office, and I've got the company first sergeant over here, and then I've got like the career planner over here saying like, "Here's your papers, just sign." And it's kind of like the devil and the angel, right? One's like, "Do this right now, or you're gonna die," and the other one's like, "Just do what you want to do. Just be happy in life," right? And company first sergeant just kind of put his hand down on my shoulders, and I felt like this massive hand. You know, he's been in the Marine Corps too long. His face is all sunken from shaving every day, and he's just like, "Dyer, make your next decision wisely." And I just signed the reenlistment papers, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'll just reenlist for 4 more years."
No kidding.
And so that 4 years turned into 8, turned into 12, turned into reserve time to 16, right? And it just turned into 2 decades of service between active duty, reserve time, and the Department of Defense. But throughout that time, I got as much education done as I possibly could.
That's awesome. That's yeah, no, I'd never heard of that program before, but you know, I can sit there and say, definitively as well that, education and the benefits of education were kind of the catalyst for me to join as well. It wasn't really about the patriotism at
Yeah.
first. It kind of turned into a lot of that, especially during. But yeah, no, it was for me. It was about school, and similarly, I ran out of money. I did 3 years of college, and then got out
Mm,
or took some time off from college, and I was working at the paint. Excuse me, the paint counter at Home Depot, and ended up running into an army recruiter there, and that's how I ended up enlisting. But um, yeah, that was
it's
interesting.
crazy.
So
I'm curious. Do you ever get the question? Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm curious because you've got the preamble to the Constitution on you. You know, you just look at you and you just scream patriotism, red, white, and blue. But do you ever get that when someone goes, "You didn't join because you were patriotic, you joined for other reasons?" Do you ever get
No,
that look or that question sometimes?
no, I haven't yet. I haven't yet, but I do
Yeah,
think that I'm kind of a billboard for what patriotism probably looks like at this
yeah,
at this point. And you know what? It,
100%, man.
it's
I love
it's
it.
it's by design. I don't really care. I love this country. I think I think it's the best country in the world, and I'll never. You can't. My opinion will never change on that. You can't sway me. Um, but so your first job after the
Yeah.
Marines, was that when you went to be a program manager for Amazon?
Yeah, well, I lapped reserve time with the Department of Defense. So you could
Gotcha.
technically say the DoD was my first job because I was still a reservist.
Gotcha.
But my primary paycheck came from the Department of Defense. And once that happened, yeah, I went into Amazon, and that was my first civilian job where I
Civilian.
was, no more Marine Corps benefits, no more base to go to. I had my ID stamped and my commissary privileges, and I was happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So what
Yeah.
was that like? I mean, going from, you know, Marines, DOD to like the civilian side. Cause for me, that was like night and day and like just such a culture
Yeah,
shock. I mean,
totally different.
how was that for you?
Same thing. I mean, you're looking at, people, I'll say like you and I, we got the military background. We breed and believe certain things, and that's who we're surrounded with, right? It's an all male dominated industry, arguably in the Marine Corps and for a lot of military. And for my job with the DoD, it was all prior service members who all had one recent combat deployment or multiple. So we all fit the same mold. And then you go into a company that is a publicly traded company owned by shareholders, right? A large, large, large cap mega organization, but it's just straight up civilians.
Mhm.
And so, how do you define that? Subjective in many ways, but it's all of a sudden you can't sit there and say what you really feel. You can't say what you really think. There's a lot of pleas and thank yous and empathy and sympathy. And as a leader, it's great because you become more diverse in leadership. It's no longer command and control. It's kind of trust and inspire. But it was a shock. It took me a while to get used to. I send you an email, write me back within 10 minutes because I just sent you an email. Right? I call you, pick the phone up when I call because I'm calling you. You get to learn that people don't think that way. Right?
Mhm.
You get an email back a week later. Hey, sorry, I was busy. Shit, we're all busy, man. But you know,
Yeah.
totally culture shock for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I say often is like the culture and the differences in leadership between, the military as opposed to like just the corporate structure is just way different. Like just I've experienced great
Yeah.
leadership in both, and poor leadership in both. But it's just very different. I feel like, in the military, you get that guy that is, they're about taking care of the soldier. They're about taking care of the team and accountability
Mhm.
and shielding their guys from, the higher ups and all of those just basic things that I feel like are almost second nature for any good leader in the military anyways. You don't get that in the corporate world and in those publicly traded companies, right? It's just, how can I
Mhm.
get the results that I need to present to my boss, and regardless of what's beneath me, so what? Just how do I climb this corporate ladder
Sure.
and benefit myself in the most effective way possible? Is That's what I see most in this new world that I find myself in, and it's uh it's it can be disheartening sometimes, frankly. It's to know that
It can be,
to
yeah.
know that there's leadership out there that really, their objective isn't really to lead, it's to receive. And it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
It's there's this everyone knows Simon Sinek, but he kind of
Mm,
summarizes it and he says, he works with a lot of military individuals, and he was talking about this experience working with some Marines and some Navy guys, and he summarized it by saying that, in the military, we sacrifice ourselves so that others may gain, whereas in the corporate world, we sacrifice others so that we may gain. He's like, that's the major difference between your military mindset and your corporate mindset in general. And I would agree with that. And I'm not talking bag about Amazon
no.
or any of their companies. That's just how it
Hmm.
is, right? How fast can I move up this corporate ladder, which we hear of all the time, and who do I step over to get there, right? Whereas I can think back to my military time, and I'm sure you can relate, where my joy came from my junior Marines maybe equaling or surpassing me, right? Or they beat me for the first time on a physical fitness test because of all the work they
Yeah.
put in. And then all of a sudden, I'm not number one anymore. But holy shit, dude, I got a platoon now of a bunch of badasses that are faster than me, stronger than me, and
Yeah.
smarter than me. Bring it on any country, you
Yeah,
know?
and that was the best part, in my opinion, of being a leader in the military was, making sure that I was setting that standard, like making sure that my guys, they couldn't shoot better than me, they couldn't beat me on a PT test, they
Mhm.
couldn't, none of this
Yeah.
shit. Like if we started like picking apart a weapon system, they couldn't tell me more about it, and all of those things is,
Yeah.
and those are the things that made leadership, like you just said, kind of echoing what you said, is just fun. When my guys got better than me at assembling, disassembling, and reassembling and doing a function check on a certain weapon system, or when they like you said, beat me on a PT test or
I love it.
whatever, those things were awesome. And I've always said
Yeah.
that your leadership in the military is kind of gauged by what's the promotion track record of the guys who served underneath you. Did those guys get promoted quickly? Did they advance? Did you know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean, you are writing a
That's a
lot of
great
their
point.
evaluations, so that's part of it. But as somebody who tries to be just fair, I hammered my guys when I needed to, and
Yeah.
I praised them when I needed to. But both of them, my two best guys, went on to you know just do awesome things and get promoted right up the ladder fast. And one of those
Yeah.
guys is still in, and that's how I gauge what it looks like, what good leadership looked like in the military, at least for me, is
Yeah.
there.
And I would say I'd say that's a testament to probably who you are, right? Or who you became
Yeah.
is, service above all and service before others is you want to look out for them before yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny, man. I was talking to a guy earlier, a couple hours ago, and just even right now with a lot of what I'm doing, it's like I get a lot out of having guests on here. It's obviously good for the podcast. It's good for me, and all of that. But man, I'm having a lot of fun just helping other guys, get their story out there.
Mm.
I just did a book review for a new friend of mine who's a Green Beret, and just his story is just amazing, and being able to kind of help him push that
Yeah.
message. And something as simple as adding a link in my Instagram for people to go and order his book and push that for him and help, you know what I mean? I'm getting so much joy out of that,
Yeah.
as opposed to what I have coming back. And I think it's important to kind of
Yeah.
compartmentalize things that way. And I think you get back what you put out, and you get it back at a later
Mhm.
time, and things happen down the road. But I just believe that uh, the debits are more important than the credits.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Lucky for you, I work in a world where I have to be introduced in order for my business to succeed. So there you go.
Hmm. Mm. And that's where I wanted to
Yeah.
go next. Actually, how did you go? How did you go about getting into military, Marines, DoD? How did you find yourself in the wealth management space?
Yeah. So I have a financial advisor that I've had for about the last 12 years. When I was active duty, he was my Marine. He was an XO of one of our units, and I ran the martial arts facility under the unit that he was the XO of. And he was transitioning out to become a financial advisor with the same company I'm with right now. And I remember calling him up saying, "Hey, sir," he's like, "Call me Ernie." I was like, "All right, sir." But anyways, I was like, "Hey, I know you do this financial stuff, and in our business, when someone asks, what do you do exactly? It's like the best question you can get because we get a chance to really explain how we can be helpful." And so I remember going to him and saying, "Hey, I've been saving for the last 13 years of my Marine Corps career. I think I might go to the reserves and get this job with the DoD. What should I be thinking about so when I transition, my finances aren't going to be a worry for me?" So, anyways, long story short, is I came on as an advisor or as a client 12 years ago, and over those years, I've seen what he's been able to do for me. And if this guy can do it, I mean, trust me, anyone can do it. And so I got to a point where Amazon wasn't working out, and I thought about what it is that I wanted to do. And he suggested I do a career change. And by a career change, going to work for myself, becoming an independent broker dealer for investments and insurance, but partnering with the company we're with, Northwestern Mutual, because I've been a client for so long, which will help build credibility. And so that's what I did. And it's been a pretty steep climb, with exams and licensing investments, but
Yeah.
that's how I came into it. And it's funny is if you could get a snapshot of my life over the years when I've asked someone, "Hey, what should I be doing?" Everyone has been like, just don't go over anything that's kind of sales wise. Don't go into anything that you have to rely on, you know, eating what you kill, so to speak, to get paid. Go work for someone where you get a good paycheck every 2 weeks and enjoy the benefits. And it didn't resonate with me after my time with Amazon. You saw
Mhm.
how much work you put in and your pay just doesn't ever increase. And then you realize you're just so disposal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that's how I got into it.
Nice,
And I
man.
just made the leap, man. Just commit.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I really only know two things, and that's the military and sales. And sales it's definitely not for the
So yeah.
weak-minded. It's not for the faint of heart, right? Like,
Hmm.
you have to get out there and really earn your paycheck, chase down your business. And, you know, I'm fortunate in my job as a software sales guy. Like I get a pretty decent salary and then commission on top of that. And, but as if you're in sales of any kind, I mean, you're not really working for your salary. You're really trying to, reach those objectives that are put in front of you, which ultimately translates to, you know, much higher earnings. And so, yeah, those are the only two things I
Yeah.
know is sales, but it gives you the most control over your W two.
Yep. And for me, it gives me that time that I need with my kids. And there's a saying in our industry where, I don't mess this up, emotion sells it. No, enthusiasm sells it, emotion buys it, and then logic pays for it. Right. And so it's one of the books I'm reading right now, Psychology of Money, is it basically alludes to the fact that a majority of people plan logically. If I put X amount of money away times X amount of years times this interest, I should have this much. But we just know that's the logic aspect of it. But the emotional aspect, that's not the case. And you and I could probably go all day about stories where years ago we thought we'd be making so much money by now, but maybe we're not there. Or we thought we'd save X amount of dollars by now, but we're not there. It's not just me, it's not just you, it's majority of the population. And so with that aspect in our business in terms of sales, like how do you get someone to commit? It's that enthusiasm sells it, emotions what buys it, and then logic is what pays for it. And so if you go with that mindset, you can attach the emotional aspects and logical, and then you got someone going, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, I've never heard that before. That's solid. And that's in the book that you're reading now.
That's just the doctorate speaking right there. No, the book part attaches to the psychology.
Okay,
That other saying is something that's said within the office.
nice.
It's probably been in the industry for
No
years.
kidding. I'm
Credit goes to our managing director.
I'm shocked I haven't heard that. That's pretty good because I like to read like sales
Yeah.
stuff and watch. Like my favorite movie in the world is Wolf of Wall Street, man. If you're a sales guy, you got to watch
Oh my gosh, man, right?
that.
It's the try watching that and just not laughing
Oh, it's
at any
impossible.
point during the movie.
It's impossible. So talk to me about you're an author as well, right? How many books have you written?
So I've got my main book, A Battle Won by Handshakes, which is a book about my time in the Marine Corps serving in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
I wrote 14 publications for Jiu Jitsu Magazine. I was their lead nutritional writer for about a year and a half.
Nice.
I wrote and co-authored Too Cool for Mentorship, and I'm doing an anthology right now called Life Changing Leadership, which is set to be published late this fall. And I'm working on my portion of it right now, literally as we speak. Like I'm trying to do a couple paragraphs every night,
Hmm.
trying to get there every week, have X amount of words done. And so I don't know, quite a handful. And it's something I do at nighttime when everyone's sleeping.
Nice. Yeah, no, I'm always curious about that and that process because I'm writing my own book. I think I might have told you that last time we spoke, but yeah, I'm writing my own book and I'm about
Yeah,
50
that
pages.
come out next year, right?
I'd love for it to come out maybe a year from right now. Finish writing it by
Okay.
end of November or so. But yeah, man, it's a lot. It's I just got to keep writing and writing. But um, as far as your book though, what made you want to write about your experiences in Afghanistan? I know a lot of guys. It's tough to even talk about that stuff. So I'm curious, what made you say, you know what, I'm going to put a book out there about leading Marines in Afghanistan.
That's exactly why I did it right there, is because it is tough to talk
Love
about.
that.
I felt I could express more on a piece. I just got goosebumps. I felt I could express more on a piece of paper what it is that I was seeing, feeling, and experiencing, as opposed to trying to tell somebody what it was like. And would I even want to? Right? I hate this question. Like, have you ever killed anyone? You ever seen a dead body? I can't stand those questions. But in the book, you can write about situations where, yes, that did happen, right? And here's how we were dealing with the situation. Here's what led up to it. And you're not sharing a story for an accolade because you saw someone die. Whereas I feel like when you're telling someone, when they ask that question, they're kind of like, oh, dude, my buddy Lucas, like he's seen dead people. Like, how badass is that? But in a book, it's out of respect to the heroism of what that individual was doing. So when you read that story, that's my take on it. So one is hard to talk about, so I wanted to write about it. The second one is when we went into Afghanistan, we were told that we'd be doing a different type of operation, fairly new to a lot of us, counterinsurgency or coin. We've heard of it. We practiced a few things. We trained. We read some, empirical evidence-based Vietnam studies about coin and stuff they did in Korea. But the Marine Corps hasn't implemented that stuff for decades. We're mission accomplishment, troop welfare, break things, shoot them up, then get the hell out. And so when we deployed, they told us we'd be doing a counterinsurgency operation mindset. We're going to go in kinetic, and then we're going to dissipate into a coin environment. And I remember thinking before even getting there, like, what a cool story this probably would be. So I better start documenting now. And so I just started documenting prior to going into Afghanistan, all the training that we were doing, what the hours that we put in, what weapon systems we were focusing on, up until the point of insertion and then to the point of extraction. Every single thing I did every day was documented on a piece of paper. And
Wow.
then whenever I would get access to a computer, I'd go to the company office and just turn those notes into written words. And then it's crazy, man. When the deployment ended and Charlie Company 1-3, a Hawaii-based unit, came in. Here's the crazy part: their platoon commander and I played hockey together back in Vermont.
Oh
Like
wow.
we didn't even realize this until we started talking about where you're from and what I did, etc. Anyways, I handed them this, 7,000-page document of after action report, and they're like, "What the fuck, Staff Sergeant? Like, what are you doing this for?" I mean, it's just how my brain worked on this deployment. So
Hmm.
take it as you want. That after action report became the SOP for the battalion when we got back to brief other units. And so I got to travel with like some of the battalion and regimental gunners and share my lessons learned from both an enlisted aspect and then as a platoon commander, which I got to do serving in combat. And then that just became a book. And that's kind of how I got it going.
That's awesome, dude. To have the foresight to have, and clarity. So have the clarity and the foresight to want to document that, ahead of time and then do it throughout and really
Yeah.
stick to that. I mean, on a deployment cycle, like that's cool, man, because that takes, obviously I've been deployed, so I understand the effort that probably took on your behalf in addition to leading soldiers in those in that environment and on those missions. So damn, that's very impressive to do that. But
I can't tell you how many times I got laughed at or how
uh,
many times I got told that my time is best used doing something else. Even coming back and going to my new role in the Department of Defense as the youngest analyst in that group, right? The newest contract. Here I am after hours working on this story, and how many people were like, "Look at this new guy. Like he's going to be fired within months. He just doesn't have what it takes." And then it's funny enough, I actually took my boss's job the next year and then published and released the book the year after that.
that's awesome.
But how many times I got doubted and laughed at? It was crazy.
Yeah, man, that is crazy. And I kind of want to transition to something else, and that's obviously you know the objective of our military is very simple, right? It's to train and equip us to go fight our nation's wars and win them. But what they don't really teach and equip you for is that transition and how to deal with a lot of the trauma that comes from those experiences. And I can only speak for myself, but coming home after seeing certain things, doing certain things, man, I had a hell of an adjustment period of just figuring out who I was and like what's going on and what happens next. And there was so much instability after my time
Yeah.
overseas. And is that anything that you experienced as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely the aspect of transitioning out and then coming into, I did it in kind of baby steps, right? I went from active duty to the reserves, DoD, and then transitioned to Amazon.
Mhm.
But the in whole the transition process, I mean, it took a lot of questions to people. It took a lot of share your experience, tell me your story, like what should I be doing? And everyone, of course, has their 8,000 things you need to check off the bucket list to get done before you even transition out.
Yeah.
I've always been more of a forward-thinking individual. I'm not a visionary at all. I don't do well at predicting things. If you ever want to win big in Vegas, just do the opposite of what I do. But what I do well is I think of something and then I go accomplish it. And it's almost to the point where it's detrimental to my relationships that no matter what happens, this mission is getting accomplished. And that's how my transition is summed up is I made these incremental goals and I was like, nothing's happening until this goal is met. And once this condition is met, I'll move on to the next one. Right. And very regimented, which is how I live my life.
Mhm.
But it worked for me and it allowed me to transition with a little bit more of ease. And then ultimately, not a sales pitch, but I had a financial advisor during this whole process. So worrying about my money was the last thing on my mind. So imagine going through a transition process where you don't even have to worry about life insurance, investments, the savings account. That stuff was already taken care of.
Yeah.
All I had to do was apply and show up on time and straighten my tie, right? And then luckily going to work for Amazon, there's no dress code, so I don't even own a suit to be honest.
That's awesome.
Still don't own one,
That's all.
you
You're
know.
lucky, man.
But yeah,
I hate
grit.
suits.
Well, for work, I have like a sports jacket, but I mean, this is what right here. I get ridiculed all the time, right? I got my tattoo showing everywhere in the office. I'm sitting down with clients, and I get this stigma from the senior advisors, the ones that have been there 15, 20 years, like, hey, you haven't earned that polo shirt. Like, where's your sports jacket? And it's like, I can't be, I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of like, wear my heart on my sleeve. This is what you get, and I don't care.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I've been for a very long time now. Not always. I think everybody likes to say like, "Oh yeah, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, this and that." Uh, it's probably been a few years where I've actually been living that way. Um, you know,
It's hard. It's hard
yeah,
because you do care.
yeah. It's very hard not to care. And I think getting out there and
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing now, and really sharing a lot more of myself, it's really helped with that and embracing that because man, if you listen to everything everybody says, your brain's gonna be a pretzel.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
Yeah. So another thing you're into, I know, we got connected through Sandra, and man, she's awesome. She's I- she's probably one of the most passionate people I've ever met, and she blames it on being Latina. So I'm gonna let her do that. But
Yes.
she's wicked cool. Are you in that area as well, like that San Diego area?
Orange County to San Diego is maybe like from you guys to downtown Boston. I don't know
Oh,
what,
okay.
maybe an
Yeah,
hour,
that's
right? Given no
oh,
traffic, a little
okay.
bit less.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Because I saw you guys are doing a speaking
She's
event,
back
right?
now. Yeah, she's got me down coming as a guest speaker to her event in October.
Nice.
And I probably should have the dates ready so I can do a plug, but I don't have it. I think it's like October 16th, but it's in San Diego. Yeah, so we're going to come down, and she wants me to speak on leadership application from some of the stuff we talked
Yeah.
about from a military to corporate to what am I doing now, and how does that even apply in the financial industry?
Nice. Nice. Yeah. No, I met her just on LinkedIn. She was on another friend of mine, his podcast, and so now
Mhm.
I'm doing a speaking engagement with her as well in Mexico in November to kind of just speak
I
on.
know the okay. I know the event. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
to speak on
I
similar
may
things.
we may meet up down there. I
Oh,
haven't
that'd be great.
committed yet, and if there's a deadline to sign up, I'll probably do it the last possible minute. But Mexico and I right now are not friends, and
Yeah.
I've got a property down there, and they owe me some money, and I'm livid, and I'm afraid if I go down there, I'm gonna like knock on the door, and be like, "Que paso? Where's my damn money?" And I
Oh
don't want to
shit.
get
Yeah, no, that's
snatched up,
that's just one of those
and
places, man. You don't kind of want to. It's not like mess around and find out, right? Like I wouldn't want to.
yeah, that's cool though. What are you speaking on? Do you have like a topic, or do you have kind of something set, or are
Yeah,
you
so
just
basically it'll
figuring it
be
out?
a lot of, I'll share my story, and then I'll talk a lot about just the basic principles around the podcast, right? About setting standards, creating habits,
Mhm.
executing, accountability. I have a slide deck prepared for a speech I'm doing a month prior to that, actually. So I'm just gonna have to tweak that, but a lot of the same points. So, but I'm excited for it.
Yep.
I went to Mexico once, and it was 2010. I went about 2 weeks before I deployed overseas. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
wow. Okay.
and
Little getaway before you take off, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I went there one time, and now I'm actually going back to the same place, same part of Mexico. So it'll be interesting. But
That's cool. It's a great story that we can share. You've got the aspect of what's effective and what's not working, right? Effective and ineffective. You guys allude to that a lot. In leadership from a combat, I've got people all the time asking me, like, what is it like leading people in combat compared to leading someone Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, right? It's just so fun to discuss
yeah,
because they're two different aspects, but there's kind of like an umbrella of some things that you just have to do, and one of them is you have to be there, right? You have to inspect what you expect, and that's how I parent. No one taught me how to be a dad,
yeah,
and so I parent that exact same way. Some people might say it's a little rigid, but I tell you what, when my two kids, they're 10 and 8, you'll never hear them talk back, and they don't ever argue or throw a fit inside a store, right? So to me, I've already won the dad game. I'm like, nice job, man. Your kids don't throw a temper tantrum.
look, there is nothing worse than being out somewhere and being like, man, that kid is an asshole.
It's
Like,
nuts.
because I hate talking. I don't want to
That
talk
was
about
me
kids
though
that
as a
way.
kid.
Oh, was it? So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't I just don't
Oh
want
yeah.
to talk that way about a kid, right? Like they're just kids, they're learning, and ultimately those types of things fall
Yeah.
back on the parent. Like where is the discipline? Where is the corrective
Mm.
action on that behavior? And when are you going to teach them that, yelling, screaming, kicking, biting, whatever, this doesn't get you what you want, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I feel like we're seeing this maybe generational shift in parenting where nope, your kids are just awesome. We're not going to be strict with them at all. We're going to let them figure things out on their own. Like, am I crazy? Because I don't have kids, so am I crazy? Because from the
It,
outside looking in, that's
look
what
at it
I
this way.
see.
Look at it this way. Adults can't even figure it out on their own, right? I work in
Mhm.
the world of finances. Adults can't even figure finances out. And so we're putting it on a kid to let them figure out who they are, let them self express themselves. And you and I know from our upbringing, I can tell you this, that if someone doesn't teach us who to be, somebody else will,
Right.
right? And so we're allowing a mass generalization process to teach individualism to children, and it's just not going to work that way.
Yeah.
In my world, it's like saying Dave Ramsey is my financial advisor because he's producing mass general information, and I'm trying to make it work as an individual plan, which we know it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so I believe that it needs to be me and their mom. We're divorced, but us together, right, need to teach our kids, rather than, let them be free express. Like, they can express themselves all they want,
Mhm.
but he's going to be a boy and she's going to be a girl, and they're going to express themselves in ways that I think, as the parent, is in their best interest.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. And I love the point you made, because if you don't influence them to do or be who they are, then somebody else is going to. And that's and
Exactly.
that's what I
Yeah.
think is just becoming more and more of the issue, is that the parents are having less influence over the kids. And again, not speaking from experience, it's just something that I see it from the outside looking in, um, and not everywhere, right? But I see it, so it's concerning to me when I think about having kids.
Yeah.
Um, so I start to think to myself, who would want to bring kids into this world and all this other stuff. And then, do you know who Nick Freitas is?
I don't
So
know.
he's awesome. If you can find him on like social media, Nick Freitas, Freitas. He's a retired Green Beret, and now he's a delegate for the state of Virginia House. And but I had this conversation with him on the
Okay.
podcast, and he was like, "Well, Denny, that's one way to look at it, but if we want to see that shift, that generational shift, go back in the other direction, you better be on the side that's having kids."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Shit." That's
Yeah.
a great point, because my logic has always said, who wants to have a kid in this day and age, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, it just makes you think, right? And that's really all I'm trying to get out there.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's my logic, is who would, right? Why would I? I'm not ready.
Yeah,
And not having a dad really hindered my ability to be confident that I could even be a
yeah,
dad, right? And if I don't think it was for like the lyrics of Tupac and every song he sang, I don't think I ever even would have like had an idea what it's like to be a dad. But
yeah,
once I had him, other than a book I read called The Paleolithic Approach to Being a Father, it's like straight caveman style on how to be a dad.
yeah.
Like, kid cries, hold kid, got it. You just kind of learn and,
Yeah,
and figure it out, man. But I feel that, at least on my street and in my zip code, my kids are being raised to influence their friends. And I love that.
yeah, yeah. That's good. I mean, that means you're raising leaders, right? And um,
Yeah.
that's I feel like that's like the best you can hope for, right? Is a kid and my niece is this way. My sister and her husband, they're just doing a phenomenal job with their two kids. And I see it in my niece. She's a leader. You know what I mean? My sister tells me, like,
Yeah.
if a girl's getting picked on at school, my niece goes and sticks up for her. And, she's just such a genuine
Oh, yeah.
good kid. And then other kids see that, and then they gravitate towards her, because she's not afraid of the BS, and she goes right at this stuff.
Hmm.
And, um, so that's those are the types of things you want to instill in your kids. And I think that's awesome.
And that's what we need, because I think we're missing that. So when something happens, what are we doing? We're filming it. Like, look what's going on,
Yeah.
as opposed to intervening and stopping it. And I guarantee most likely it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, let me get this old guy getting beaten up on film, instead of, how about I go help this old guy getting beat.
Yeah.
That stuff makes me sick. But that's just that
Yeah.
digital world that we live in now. It's just everything's a
Yeah.
snapshot, everything's a short, everything is just, it's a highlight reel, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
When I grew up and if something happened to me, I got beat up, I would just go get two more friends. And then you try to outwin with numbers. And if you beat them up, that person go get four more friends, right? And eventually you either come to a conclusion of, we're gonna work this out and be cool with it,
yeah.
or we're just not ever gonna talk to each other again, and you do your own thing, I'll do our things, right?
Yeah.
You just don't see that anymore.
No, and like you don't see that, like, just fist fights, and they go right to the internet and just start attacking each other there. My best friend Mike, who does
Yeah.
who
I mean,
does
I'm not encouraged. No, what's that?
no, I was just gonna say, so my best friend Mike, who I do the show with, I mean, he's got a 16-year-old stepdaughter, and man, she talks about, like, the stuff, the bullying online, and these kids, just they go home and just start, there's no
Mm,
outlet. There's no way out from it. You just get hammered
yeah,
all day, all night, and it's like, it's unfortunate. But back in the day with us, none of this
yeah,
stuff existed. We could just go meet up. We're gonna meet here and we're gonna fight, and then it's over. You know,
yeah.
I'm man.
Then it's done with.
We're gonna go back to that.
I my kids, I do them. I call this like the 3 point philosophy, where because it comes up all the time, right? Hey, Dad, do we get into a fight? What do we do when this happens?
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer of one. I'm not encouraging go punch someone in the face because you don't like them, but my rule here and what my two kids live by is something that I preach often to them is you have three options when this occurs, right? And it's almost like escalation of force for a young kid. You're going to ask them the first time with a please. Please stop doing this. Please leave me alone. Please don't call me that name. Please go away. Whatever it is, right? If it happens again, you drop the please. Stop doing this. Don't do this. I told you to stop. If it happens a third time, you drop them to the floor,
Yeah.
right? And that's how it works in my house. And so if it happened the other day, my son, who's a sweet, sweet kid, he's very empathetic. He's not as ruthless as my daughter, who's 8. He's 10. He hit a dude in the throat, right? And when the teacher called us, I wasn't like, "What the hell happened?" I was like, "Hey, let me, here, tell me the story." He jumped steps 1 and 2, which is why I got upset with him. He just went straight to step 3, right? And he was sitting outside waiting for the bus to go to the aftercare, and some kid had mentioned something about his YouTube channel, and he got mad. So the kid tried taking his laptop. He stood up and just got him right in the throat,
Mm,
right? And so part of me was like, I like that aspect, but as a dad, I had to say, hey, let's go back to what we're taught, right? Did you ask him to stop nicely,
mhm.
right? Did he keep doing it? Did you tell him to stop forcefully? And then as a last result,
Yeah.
what do you do? And he's like, no, I just went to step 3, Dad. It's like, let's bring it back a little bit.
Yeah, no, but at least at
You know?
least he's been taught, right? Like and that's probably the most important thing is that he's been taught like to kind of de-escalate first, and it's like your warning shots overseas, right? Like this, you don't just go right
Yeah,
to kill.
yeah.
You gotta there were rules of engagement that we had to follow. Um Actually, when I was over there, warning
100%.
shots
I'm a de-escalation guy.
yeah. Me too, man.
No warning shots for us.
I think about that yeah, so it's funny is warning shots were unauthorized when I was there. So I remember I remember being in a
Mhm.
particular engagement and I had to write a sworn statement and I put in there that I fired warning shots and they brought it back to my room. They're like, "Hey man, you got to take these warning shots out. They're not authorized." I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
yeah,
So I had to take them out of my
yeah,
sworn statement. So that was funny. Um
yeah. Oh man.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
funny.
I'm a de-escalation guy. I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm easygoing,
Yeah.
and I de-escalate. I have a high pain tolerance. I
Mm.
have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
But once that please has gone away,
Yeah.
dude, it just all comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this video by Jocko one time and I loved it. He's like, "Look, I'm gonna run away from you
Mm,
in a fight because I'm not too much to lose. Like too much, so many bad things can
yeah,
happen. Like you catch somebody one punch the wrong way, they fall in the wrong direction and they're dead. It's not worth it.
otherwise,
I'm
yeah,
gonna run away from you unless you really come at me. I'm done. Like, all right, you win, man. My
yeah,
mother's this, my whatever's that. Okay, you're right. Have a nice night. Yeah, I that happened to me
yeah.
a couple years ago. I was in Nashville and this guy, man, he wouldn't leave me alone. He just wanted to fight. And just walked away. I was like, "Yeah, man, you're right. I'm a pussy. I'm this. I'm, whatever." And just finally
Mhm.
walked away and then come to find out my friends had stayed there and they were like, "Yeah, he ended up getting a fight with somebody else." And it was like he was just looking for trouble. But
He was just looking. Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah.
Well, I'm a CCW holder, so I can't go out looking for trouble. It's the
Yeah.
last thing we want to do.
Yep.
We want to avoid any situation at all
Mm.
costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been cool getting to know you these last few conversations, and I would certainly like to keep it going. I really hope you come to Mexico. I think that'd be great. Um, but just to kind of like wrap things up a little bit, is there anything else that you wanted to touch upon, or?
I was going to just kind of summarize. I was looking over a lot of your website information, what you guys do, and
Sure.
prior podcasts. I love the message. Where you guys are at, building the habits. I don't know who originally said this, but I love this. I was taught it from another Marine, George Lockhart, who's one of the most baddest dudes I've ever met. He's one of the main nutritionists right now in the UFC, and he's got a good fighting career behind him. He's a phenomenal guy, and he would always tell us you know, and as it relates to who you are, right? Your words become your actions, right? Your actions become your habits, and your habits define your character. And you'd always tell us this at one of this martial arts schools I went to, and I think it's paraphrased different ways, but basically, you start thinking about something, you start saying it, you start doing it, and that's who people know you to be.
Mhm.
And a good example would be the person that's always got these ideas, but they never do anything with it,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to the person that's like, I want to do this, I can see it happening, I'll figure it out until I get there, right? Like your book, hey, November 2025, right?
Mhm.
I would say release it 10 November 2025 on the Marine Corps birthday, because I can help you promote that,
All right.
and you'll have every
I,
Marine in the world purchasing it.
I
But I
wouldn't be
end it with
opposed.
that, man. Like,
I wouldn't be opposed to it. Even being an army guy.
there you go. Yeah. I end it with that, man. Just
Yeah. No.
that's how you define your character right there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. One of the things I've said, and it's actually like if you watch the video to the intro of my podcast, I say it. If you really commit to like who you want to be and these changes you want to make, it's 18 months. 18 months you can be the person that you want to be. Like you said,
Mm,
you think it, you speak it, you act. It takes all the action to do it, but you figure it out along the way. And man, once you just take
yep.
that action and start to really pivot when you need to and do the things that you need to do in order to get where you want to be, man, it happens. It really does. And you don't need a
Yeah.
clear light at the end of the tunnel to get where you want to go. You just need to take action. That's my message.
Just do it, man. Yeah.
But
Love it.
uh,
Well, it resonates with me. That's why we're here.
yeah, man, absolutely. But the last thing I want to close out on, you're an entrepreneur. You got your own wealth management firm, business. Talk to my viewers about how they can get in touch with you if they're looking for any advisors or any advisement on their finances.
I appreciate it. Probably the best way is through LinkedIn. I do a lot of my networking, a lot of my outreach on LinkedIn, and just look me up. Lucas Dyer, Dyer. And if you just got questions, I'm not going to charge you for my time. You're not going to be charged for a meeting. Simply reach out and see if I can be a resource or add some value.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate that. Hopefully you get some hits off of that. But just awesome having you here, and I appreciate it. And yeah, we're definitely going to stay connected, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.